To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Park Authority Board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record, as we did in our first electronic meeting. During our meeting, if you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand. And when I recognize you, please state your name. This will ensure that you are recognized and the public knows who is speaking. If you intend to vote nay or abstain on any item, we will need to do a roll call on those votes. If you are not on mute, if you're not speaking, please go on mute so we won't have any interference. Because of each member of this board is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all other members to hear. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear each other member, and we will go alphabetically to start. Dr. Adu.
Abna Edu, joining from my residence in Lee District.
Dr. Carter.
Cynthia Jacobs Carter, participating from my home in Lee District.
Maggie Godbold.
Maggie Godbold, dialing in from my home in the Sully District.
Linwood Gorham.
Linwood Gorham, participating from my home in the Mount Vernon District.
Tim Hackman.
Tim Hackman, participating from my residence in the Drainsville District.
Ron Kendall.
Ron Kendall, participating from my home in Dayton District.
Faisal Khan.
Faisal Khan at my residence at Providence District.
Ken Quincy.
Ken Quincy, I'm at my residence in the Providence District.
Kyle Stone.
Kyle Stone from my residence in the Braddock District.
Michael Thompson.
Mike Thompson, I'm currently in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay, Jim Zook.
Jim Zook from my home in Springfield District.
And I'm Bill Bowie, and I'm participating from my home in the Hunter Mill District. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chairman Quincy so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
Ken Quincy, you have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Mike Thompson, I second the motion.
Ken Quincy, it has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this board and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video conference system. It is so moved.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion is approved.
Thank you, sir. This is Bill Bowie again. Finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the state of emergency itself or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and discharge of this board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike Thompson, and I second the motion.
Ken Quincy, is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. This is Bill Bowie. So that now we've got all the preliminary matters are completed, we can begin the meeting. Administrative items. Admin item number 1 is the resolution honoring Francis Jankowskis upon his retirement from the Fairfax County Park Authority.
This is Maggie Godbold. I make a motion to approve this resolution.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Congratulations to Mr. Jankowskis, and I'd love at some point to be able to give him his certificate. He did a great job, and we are surely going to miss him. Okay. Are we going to read the resolution? I'm asking the board, are we reading the resolution on this?
Up to you.
This is Mike Thompson. I would just move that we enter the full resolution into the record.
I would agree with that.
That's the motion. I'll second it. This is Ken Quincy.
All those in favor say aye.
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 I'll say nay. Motion carries to move this to the record. And again, thank you, Francis, for your great service. Admin item number 2 is a resolution honoring Nancy Olney upon her retirement from the Fairfax County Park Authority.
Ron Kendall, I so accept the resolution.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Again, man, we're losing a lot of folks here that have got this incredible experience in the Park Authority. We certainly want to thank Nancy for her more than 25 years of dedicated service. And we will submit the resolution to the official record of the board. Thank you very much. Countywide, admin item number 3 is the adoption of the minutes of the September 9th, 2020 Park Authority Board meeting.
This is Mike Thompson. I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. We will now go into closed session.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board recess and convene in closed session for discussion and consideration of matters enumerated in Virginia Code 2.2-3711 and listed in the agenda for this meeting as follows. Discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or for the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, and consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating and litigating posture of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
This is Bill Bowie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are in closed session. Now out of closed session, and we need to certify the topics discussed in the closed session.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia Code 2.2-3712 and only business matters as were identified in the motion with the following correction. That when we moved into closed session, I referred to section 2.2-3711A7 of consultation about negotiation or litigating posture of public body, when it should have been consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 in the motion, by which the closed meeting and what was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the board.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded with the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are certified.
This is Linwood Gorham. I'd like to move that the property discussed in the Mount Vernon district under C1 be added to the work plan.
This is Tim Hackman. I second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. So we have added to the work plan in Mount Vernon. On to action items, countywide. Action A1, approval of the policy 405 sign and display revisions.
This is Faisal Khan. I make a motion to approve sign and display revision to policy 405.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. In the Mason District, A2, scope approval, Green Spring Gardens Visitor Services Improvements.
Yeah, I make a motion to reprogram per the Green Spring Gardens request.
That was Ron Kendall.
That was Ron Kendall.
Tim Hackman. I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, this is Bill Bowie, and Mike Baird will make his presentation on action items A3 through 5.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The first item is Mike Baird speaking here, and Hannah is bringing up action item 3, which is the FY22 general fund budget submission. And Hannah, if you could just scroll up just a tiny bit here, or actually down, my apologies. This is the 22 for the general fund budget submission. This is, I will mention that we had briefed the board back on our September 9th meeting. This submission is really based on the DMB guidance that we have, and that budget will be basically submitted at the FY21 adopted level. And basically what you see here in the background section, basically from the memo from DMB, that FY22 is, the forecast continues to be pretty weak with overall county revenues. So again, our budget is submitted at the FY21 adopted level to meet those requirements for them. Other possible adjustments that we had mentioned last time to the board is there might be some compensation increases. We do not know what those would be at this point in time. And then we are putting forward 2 addendum requests that we had mentioned to the board at our previous meeting on the 9th. $130,000 request for drive cam. That is some technology is in our vehicles. That technology is now getting old and outdated, and it needs to be replaced for the drive cam systems to continue working. The other addendum item that we would put forward is a $1.3 million request for deferred tree maintenance. And this is really necessary to be more proactive in our tree work versus being reactive. And if you just scroll on through at this point, the fiscal impact that you see right there is at the budget submission. We have a revenue of $682,000, which is based on our 21 adopted, and actual expenditures of $27.4 million with a net cost of the county of $26.7 million. Hannah, if you don't mind, if you could bring up attachment 1. And this for the board is just kind of an easier visual way of seeing what we're talking about. the FY21 adopted is what we're putting forward with the FY22 budget request. Any questions on that submission? Okay. Hannah, if we can, we'll probably just move forward to action item 4, which is the Park Revenue Fund. And the Park Revenue Fund here, as we mentioned really a couple weeks ago, also, this I would basically consider this be as a placeholder budget. Again, of all the impacts of COVID, and in the background section there that Hannah is bringing up to our attention, the revenue budget of $48 million, which is a slight decrease of the 2021 adopted, and expenditures of $45.9 million compared to $47.1 million, a decrease of $1.1 million. And the next paragraph really kind of sums up where we are right now with all the uncertainties of COVID. We had reached out to DMB, we had gotten their guidance on this stuff, and our 22 submission is going to be pretty much based on our 21 adopted levels, but also knowing it is very likely, I wouldn't say quite certain, but almost a certainty that adjustments will be needed to this budget as we get more clarity moving forward, as more of the things of COVID become known. A couple of the unknowns, that we kind of typically always deal with. One of them is the same thing that we had in the general fund, is compensation increases. Luckily on the general fund side, the county funds that for us. On the revenue fund side, the revenue fund has to support those increases. And then the indirect cost from the county, right now, it's again being held at the 2021 adopted level. Hannah, if you can, we can probably just bring up attachment 1. Thank you. Attachment 1, I do want to highlight one bit of good news of all the COVID stuff. We certainly had lots of bad news, but under the expenditures on the 4th item down, bond cost, if you look over at the FY 2022 request, you'll see that amount is reduced to 0. And that is the impact of we have finally paid off the Twin Lakes debt. So that is certainly great.
Great.
It's certainly great news. Unfortunately, it's a little bit overshadowed with all the COVID stuff, but going forward long term is certainly a great thing. I mean, that removes $800,000 worth of annual debt for us. So as we emerge from COVID and things get better, it certainly will put us in a great position. And it's why when you're looking at the 21 plan and the 22 submission, why our net is actually better, it's really the submission of that debt service cost being taken out of the equation. Attachment 2, Hannah, is really a fund statement, which probably for the most part the board is not too interested in seeing. So any questions on the revenue fund submission for 22? Okay. Hannah, if we can, then we'll bring up action item 5, which is the 2022 budget submission for General County Construction. And this is the 22 submission for General County Construction. And we have the county carved out some of the environmental piece of that. So that is in a different fund, Fund 30015. So for action item 5, we have both of those in there. And if we can kind of just scroll down a little bit, Hannah. The submission here in the background, this is basically pretty much mirrors the 21 submission. And actually, I should say there in the background, compared to the FY20 adopted, it should be 21 adopted. So correction there. There is an increase here of $605,000. I do want to bring to the board's attention, and that is part of the second bullet there that Hannah has right there in front of us. And this is to provide funding to take care of the 44 synthetic turf fields that we are taking responsibility of from the schools. It is important to note that the $605,000 is the county's contribution for that. There should be a matching school contribution of the same amount. So this request is really based on the schools coming forward with a $605,000 match to support the maintenance on those 44 synthetic turf fields for the schools. Hannah, we can just kind of roll through the rest of these, the different projects that we have. And it might be easier if we bring up attachment 1. And this is where, again, we can kind of see the requests, the adopted requests, the 22 requests that we're moving forward with, a little bit easier to see these at this level. The $605,000 increase, which is half the cost of those 44 fields, assuming that the schools will match that with a $605,000 contribution also. And then in the below, the new fund, where these used to be Fund 30010, is now a new EIP Energy Fund, the submissions for those projects. Any questions on these?
No, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. This is Bill Bowie. We need a motion to approve A3, A4, and A5.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Tim Hackman. I move that the board approve item A3, the FY22 budget submission for Fund 10,001, the general fund.
Is there a second?
Ken Quincy, I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tim Hackman. I move that the board approve action item A4, the FY22 budget submission fund 80,000 park revenue and operating fund.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve action item A5, the FY22 budget submission for funds 30,010, the General County Construction Fund, and the Environmental and Energy Management Program Fund, Fund 30,015.
Ken Quincy, I second.
Is any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thanks, Mike. All right. Information items. Mike Baird is going to talk to items, information item number 1 and information item number 2, both countywide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Baird again, Financial Management. Information item 1, we'll start with that one first. And I guess I'll just ask Hannah to bring that up just so you can see that, so we have it available. But this is something that the board has seen. We actually kind of touched on these figures 2 weeks ago on our September 9th. But this is kind of a process that we normally do. We circle back to the board for a fourth quarter review so the board can see how we ended up with FY20 numbers. Normally we'd provide some analysis and details there, but this case with all the COVID stuff, we did not do that. But you can kind of see where we ended up FY20 with the general fund. Lots of impacts of COVID, of course, hit this fund.
Yeah.
Any questions there, sir? Okay, if we can bring up information item 2. Thank you. And this is, again, kind of the same thing with information item 1, but this is now taking a look at the revenue fund, how we ended the revenue fund. The first section that we see right there is the revenue on the revenue fund, where we ended the year at $31 million compared to $47 million, a decrease, which is expected, of course, due to the impacts of COVID hitting us in March. That fourth quarter is typically our busiest and most profitable quarter, and we basically lost the impacts of that. I will note, admin revenue is up, but that is really due to action that the board took. And that's where you can see the impacts of moving over the monopole money. So I wish I could take credit that admin did very good, but it's where you can see the impacts of that monopole revenues being moved in. Certainly worth noting here too, golf. Revenue down only $200,000, and that was with them being closed for a couple months. You can certainly see what a great year golf had, even with all the COVID stuff. They did fantastic. As we move down, you can see expenditures for the fourth quarter of $37 million compared to $46 million, which represents a decrease of $8.9 million. And again, a lot of that is just, the impacts of COVID, sites being closed, programs not being held, where you can see those impacts there. Any questions on information item 2 for the revenue fund? Okay. Hannah, we can probably bring up information item 3. Thank you. The next two items for the boards, bringing to the board's attention, are the submissions for the two capital funds. Information item 3 is a 22 submission for Fund 30400, Park Bond Construction. The main thing really worth noting here that this item and the next item are really placeholder budgets for this process. The budget for both of these funds is done at the end of the year as part of the carryover process where we see what the ending year balances are, and that's where the monies carry forward to the next fiscal year. So this submission really just reflects the FY20 carryover amounts for this fund. And if we can scroll through there, and we have a couple attachments in these. Again, we'll have the fund statement, so you can see the 22 submission is really 0, and that budget will be done at the end of this fiscal year through the carryover process, where we'll see what the funding is for 22. But what you do see there, the carryover budget for this year of $84.3 million for your bond program to get the projects in the ground and land acquisition and so forth. Hannah, if you just do the next attachment. And this is for the board seal, so you can see is the carryover for the projects that we have currently in your bond program with the $84.3 million available this year to spend. Any questions on Fund 30400? Okay. We move on to information item number 4. And much of the same, this is for Fund 80300, the Park Improvement Fund. This is a fund that the board does have fiduciary responsibility for. And again, this budget is also done at the year-end process. It's really done via the carryover process. So what you're seeing here is really a placeholder budget submission at this point in time. But you can see there the total appropriation that we do have to work with this year is the $21.8 million. Hannah, if we can just scroll on down. So at this point, like I say, this is really just a placeholder budget. If we can bring up the next attachment, the FY22 submissions, what you see here is just enough funding there to fund our reserves. And I will bring to the board's attention to the bottom there, repair and replacement reserve of $700,000. As I mentioned, this year we'll be finishing paying off the Twin Lakes debt. That reserve that you see there is a bond indenture associated with that debt. So once we make that final payment, we should be making that in the next couple weeks or a month or so. As we move through this year, we might have some opportunities to take a look at that reserve, and based on the board's direction, we could redirect that once we pay off that debt service and that's been paid off. We might have some opportunities to reprogram that $700,000 to help out the Park Authority in different ways. Any questions on Fund 80300 22 submission? Mr. Chairman, I think that is it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mike. This is Bill Bowie. All right, we'll move on to Chairman's Matters, and we'll move through this quickly. Thanks again, everybody, for all of your support during this crazy, crazy time. Of course, voting started last week. Over 100,000 folks in Fairfax County have already voted, which is fantastic. And we've been pushing the bond as much as we possibly can. I think we're in the middle of a tsunami right now in terms of folks trying to vote early. So as often as we can, make sure that folks that you come in contact with are aware, share it on all of your social media, your Facebook page and Twitter if you're so inclined, so we can push this thing through. But everything I've heard so far from the community, people have approached me and said, we've got the best parks in the country and we want to make sure that we keep that in spite of conversations around anything else. Second thing is that the ordinance was passed by the Board of Supervisors, which prohibits guns in the parks and in our rec centers. That went into effect immediately. The board was sent out a notice this week about any questions that you may have on how that's being implemented or how it's being policed, if you will. If you've got any additional questions beyond that, please get with Kirk or with Sarah or Amy, and we'll move forward from there. And then the last thing that I've got tonight is that the board also made basically a restatement of the One Fairfax policy last week. They are going to ask all boards and commissions to adopt and ratify One Fairfax. In addition to that, they are going to ask each individual member of each board and commission to ratify One Fairfax. We were the very first board that supported and accepted One Fairfax going back to late 2016, right after it was adopted by the board. We were the first board to do it. I sent a note to the Board of Supervisors on the entire board's behalf last week to remind them of that fact and that we continue to make One Fairfax a part of our ethos and a part of our main part of our strategic plan, and that we will support them in any way that we can. So that's all that I have, and I'll pass it on to Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kirk Kincannon here, Director of the Park Authority. As Chairman Bowie indicated, the gun ordinance passed. We are heavily involved in that, related to preparations for preparing staff, training staff, working with the county on that. There's also training related to the elections office for the polling areas that we have in the Park Authority. And so that will be, I believe Sarah's in a meeting on that this next week. So that training will also begin as we go forward during this election season, in addition to the gun ordinance that we're enacting. This fall, because of the pandemic concerns, Historic Oak Hill will open its doors to the public through a virtual tour rather than the traditional open house that's been scheduled in the past for September 26th. Residents, historians, and government staff are working together with Channel 16 to produce an online event to keep the open house tradition alive, but via virtual. The video tour will be debuting later this fall. Seville Homes, the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, the Fairfax County Park Authority, and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors work to save the property and stop construction of multiple homes at the location, and work to develop the easement to preserve this privately owned historical property, including its 200-year-old boxwoods. Part of the agreement, the owners are required to open the property and the first floor of the home to the public periodically. Given the effects of COVID, we're doing that virtually this year. Purchase of the historic easement on Oak Hill offered an opportunity to preserve an important piece of county history. So we want to thank all of those involved in that, and Judy and her team for working on the virtual component this year. The park bond, as you noted, Mr. Chair, is coming our way related to the vote on November 3rd, and going strong related to our outreach in the Park Authority. Judy and her team and others are involved in multiple highlights, which include passing out and posting over 700 of the 1,500 signs at polling stations and in the community. So we want to thank the park board members and the park foundation members and members of the public and the friends groups who've helped us do that. Posts are running on social media on a regular basis, and these are informational in nature and lead individuals back to the Park Authority webpage and related to the bond. We're also working on the presentation of multiple bond outreach opportunities. We've done multiple already related to Green Springs, Riverbend, the Athletic Council, the Park Foundation, the Plains Citizens Association, and Environmental Committee, Friends of Colvin Run, Great Falls Citizens Association, an Environmental Park Committee, Kings Park West Civic Association, Friends of Huntley Meadows, Friends of Frying Pan Park, multiple park volunteer groups, and park employees, including a town hall meeting that we held last week. We have and continue to present as we get closer to November 3rd to ensure that our outreach is substantial and continues to be provided to our community upon their request. Videos are forthcoming. One is park-centric, the other is countywide related to the park bond, and a mailer is going out countywide with park bond questions and park bond information. The media has shown definite interest in the bond and what we'll be providing to our community should it pass, and several stories have already run in the local print and media areas. You can assist as advocates, as we've said, writing letters to the editor, placing signs and getting the word out and telling us about potential meetings we can present at. More than happy to do that. Judy Peterson is in the meeting tonight if you have any questions, and other than that, I'm going to step off and say thank you all for your great work. Thank you, sir.
He's frozen in time. Tim Hackman.
Mr. Chairman, I pass. Tim Hackman, thank you.
Ken Quincy. You're on mute. Now you're good.
Okay, and Quincy, I pass.
All right. Abena.
I pass. Thank
Ron Kemp, we're going to come back to you.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't hear you the first time.
Okay.
I don't have a lot to say other than I think the staff are doing a great job. Kirk's doing a great job. And I see no diminishment in the access that people are having to the parks. So as long as the weather holds, we're going to have full houses in all these parks.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Yes, I would like to extend my appreciation to everyone for the wonderful, heartfelt expressions of condolences that you've sent my way in the loss of my sister. Believe me, it really does lift my spirits. Thank you.
You're welcome, and God bless her. We'll keep her in our memories for sure. Faisal? Faisal?
I'll pass.
Kyle?
Nothing for me.
Linwood?
Like to thank staff and everyone. It's hard work that led to the news that I received earlier today in an email that we all received. And that was that the Central Green area in Laurel Hill is now open for business. That's been a long time coming, and I'm sure it's going to be enjoyed by all for many years to come. Thank you again for everybody that helped with that.
You're welcome. Maggie?
Pass. Thanks so much.
Mike Thompson?
Yeah, quickly, just first want to thank Judy and the team for their presentation to the Athletic Council. I think it went very well. I appreciate them taking the time and answering all those questions. I want to thank everybody who's been working on the Braddock Park program as we get ready for the information meeting that is coming up. And like to echo the earlier sentiment that I just want to thank the staff. And I know this is a tough and trying time, and I appreciate you, everything you're doing and putting up with all of us.
Thank you. Any other comments this evening? Seeing that there are none, be safe out there, keep in touch, wear a mask, and with that, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.